validation. Once you have developed your model, you must find out whether your model is good or not. Get ready to become an element of the set of people that understand data validation. The four main factors influencing model validation are performance measurement, abstraction process, assumption verification, and lastly, we must keep in mind that model validation does not imply model verification. 6 main concepts of data valuation which we will evaluate. First, the Kolmogorov-Smirnov model, also called KS. Second, the Gini model. Third, the out-of-time sample model. Fourth, the bootstrapping model. Fifth, the k-fold resampling model. And lastly, the population stability index model. Here is a graphical representation of the Gini versus the KS model. These are the two most commonly used methods for validating credit scoring models. This is the KS model. It works by measuring the maximum degree of separation between two distributions, in this case the positive and the negative. If the KS is 100%, this means that at a given threshold the distributions are perfectly separated. If the KS score is 0, it means that the distributions are not separated at all. In the following slides, we will be showing you an example of KS implementation. First, we load our packages necessary. Next, we upload a toy dataset into Python. Here, we separate it into the independent variables and the dependent variables. Next, we must split it for training and testing datasets. We will be using a simple KNN classifier in this example. And we load a new dataset to test the classifier model to do the same transformations. Here, we take the prediction of the new dataset and take the prediction of this new dataset. Here we are using the KS function, which our dear professor showed us in class. Now we will explain in detail how the Gini coefficient works. Most commonly, it is used to assess things like wealth inequality. Gini coefficients are also used to evaluate the predictive power of credit scoring tools. The Gini coefficient describes the global quality of a scoring function. It helps a lender understand how good its credit score is at predicting who will repay and who will default on a loan. We will now show you a practical implementation of Gini in Python. Now we arrive at the out-of-time sample validation concept. We use out-of-time sample validation to see if our model is able to predict a time period not encompassed by our training data. Now we arrive at bootstrapping. Essentially, it encompasses any test that uses subsamples from a sample taken out of a population of data with replacement to validate a model. In theory, the distance between the population and the sample mean should be similar with the distance between the sample and the subsample. If a large enough sample is a good representation of the population, a large enough sample of the sample should also be a good representation. The pros of bootstrapping are that it can be used in multiple models from linear regression to unsupervised methods. Con is that it relies heavily on a sample, and if this sample fails to capture the information from the population, we have a problem. Here is an example of bootstrapping. Now we will describe the population stability index concept, or also short PSI, used to determine whether new population is statistically similar to our old population. Thus, it allows us to determine whether we need to change our model or not. Here we have the PSI validation steps. On this slide, we can see the rules for the PSI process. Also, the formula for the PSI process. Now, our last concept is the k-folds validation. It is the gold standard and our go-to estimator for the performance of any algorithm. It allows us to test our model against several samples in an attempt to find the coefficients that give the better results. However, it can be very time-consuming depending on the amount of folds. The norm is using k is equal to 10. Wake up! If you have paid attention, you can now proudly call yourself part of the set of people that understand data validation and slide 44. Good luck on your journey to harness the deep power of Python.